Good afternoon. This is Mike McClanahan, Transportation Manager with TDOT's Highway Beautification Office. It's currently the afternoon of December 13th. It's a Thursday, right before the holidays, but we're going to record this and get it posted online, and I'm sure it will be up on Friday, December 14th. So anyways, just wanted to put a presentation together. We did a presentation very similar to this last December about our special litter grant, kind of explaining it. Congratulations, the people listening to this are the awardees of our grant, so we're really excited to work with all of you. There's 15 grants that we've gone under 15 projects we've gone under contract with on this special litter grant round. So we're really excited about all the projects. Some of you we have worked with before, some of you we haven't. Some of you are doing some litter enforcement type activities, some are kind of doing some public education type things, physical cleanups. We've got one is doing some benchmarking, and then another project is really focusing on capturing litter as it leaves stormwater. So the projects are pretty varied. We're pretty excited to work with all of you. That said, let me get started here and just kind of tell you this will hopefully be something that you can listen to once and refer back to as you need, but hopefully it's pretty self-explanatory. This is going to mirror our regular litter grant that we offer to all 95 counties. If any of you receive our regular litter grant funding, this is very similar to it. The invoicing will be. So anyways, at any point, feel free to refer back to this. We're going to put the slides separate from me talking, but these slides will be available, and then also this presentation will be available. Refer back to that. Feel free to drop me a line at any time. I know several of you have my contact information already, but we'll give it to you again as part of this. And then I just want to make sure that you understand that TDOT staff are really a resource. We're friendly folks here, and we want to help you guys on the front end. So we're eager to help, eager to take any questions. If you get stuck, always feel free to reach out to us. So that said, we're going to spend a couple slides just talking about invoicing as a process, an overview of invoicing. We're going to talk about the different components of your invoice that you'll be submitting. So first and foremost, your cover sheet, your performance sheet, your schedule sheet, and then some of the other things that are going to go along with that. So, you're going to report to us what you spent and what you did, and then you're going to have those backup documents, like your time cards, any other personnel information, anything that you've spent money on as far as purchasing and receipts, and then some of your supplemental documents, like if you got any good publicity out of the last quarter. So we'll go over that in a minute. And then once we're done talking about spending the money and invoicing and getting the money back to you, we're going to talk a little bit about what comes on the back end of all of this, the site visit that our staff will be making to you, and then also the desk audit that you'll be going through. So I wanted to give you some of that that background, and that's what we'll talk about here in the next couple of minutes. Okay, so just from a 5,000-foot level looking down, I wanted to give you guys really a basic approach to all of this. I know I've already sent out the invoice documents, and I think we've got 15 projects. I've actually got 3 invoices in from the period July, August, and September. So 3 of you have already went ahead and put together an invoice, and we're in the middle of reviewing those. So anyways, thanks for that, and hopefully this will help you. If you haven't submitted, that's A-OK. You can still submit, but feel free to use this as well. Okay, so just from a really high level, I want to tell you, submit your invoices to me, personally to me, quarterly. And of course, I want to go over this, y'all know this, but a quarter is 4 times a year. January, February, March is 1 quarter. April, May, June is another quarter. July, August, and September is the third quarter. And then the fourth quarter is October, November, and December. So 3 months, 3-month blocks. If you haven't done any activity over a quarter, please submit anything anyways. I want to see 4 invoices from you for the 2 years that this grant exists. If you didn't spend any money, you didn't do anything, just put zeros through everything. We're still going to keep it in your file, and we're going to document, that there was nothing on this quarter or that you were finished or, whatever it may be. But make sure you submit an invoice every quarter for all 3 months. And I listed the months. This is going to be a little bit tricky, but like I said, we've got 3 invoices currently, and one of our grantees did this. But see if you can put everything into one PDF document. When you submit things to me, I'm going to have to pare it down into one PDF document because we're going to take that and we're going to have to upload it into the accounting software. And so that does 2 things. One, it backs up the payment that we're sending to you. And then 2, it gives the auditor something to look at after the fact. So no matter what you send me, I'm going to have to print it out, or I'm going to have to merge the files, or I'm going to have to do whatever and put it into one PDF. So if you could do that on the front end, that would be incredibly helpful. I'll tell you that if you put it into one PDF and I come back and say, hey, we're missing this, or hey, we need a new timesheet, it needs another signature, that sort of thing, that's okay. I can merge the file into the existing PDF. Just I'm trying to encourage everyone to send it to one PDF. It's also a little bit difficult because you have all of these things that you're trying to submit. So I listed them a little bit already, and we'll go through each one of these. But, you're submitting a cover sheet, which is a Word document. Your performance sheet is the second page of that Word document. You've got a schedule sheet, which is an Excel document. You've got timesheets, which are also Excel. And then you've got receipts, which are pieces of paper that you're probably copying copying and putting with other pieces of paper. So, you got different type of files. I know you're going to have to pare that down into a single file, but if you could put everything into a PDF, I can't tell you how helpful that is. So that's 1 through 5. The 6th thing, you can feel free to send me as many hyperlinks or picture files or anything else as you can. I'll tell you that our office is on Twitter. We are at TDOT_Beautify. So we're going to take that social media and we're going to tweet about you. We want to highlight your project, highlight what you're doing, put a spotlight on the good work that you guys are doing. So I'll tell you that any picture you send me, we're going to publicize it if we can. We're going to tell others about it. We want to do some storytelling with the fact that you guys have such awesome projects out there. So long story short, if you get a paper article written about you, if you get some good pub, if you get some pictures of an event or anything like that, feel free to include it. It does not have to go into the one PDF. It can be a separate file, and that's 100% okay. But we definitely want to see those and keep them on file and share them with the state and with everyone who's interested. We do an annual report that goes to the governor's office every year for the Litter Grant funding, and so not the one that we'll be writing here in a month or two, but after that, we are going to spotlight some of these projects in this report that goes to the governor. We might even do some video work associated with it. So just know that we want to get that out there, and we want to see as much as you got. Feel free to send it our way. We love hearing about that stuff from all of our grantees. And then this is just another reminder. Don't forget to send anything good that send it our way if you got good mentions out of it. We always love hearing that. And it could be a hyperlink. You could just email me to a web story, or if it's a newspaper article, feel free to cut it out, magazine article, cut it out. Any pictures you've taken with your phone or anything else, social media posts, feel free to send any of that. Okay, so your invoice submittal, the first thing that you're going to do is tally up a cover sheet. And so the cover sheet is pretty, I just grabbed a screenshot here. The cover sheet is individually built for your project. I built it for your project. So it's got your agency specific, address, your contract number, all your specific project information is listed on that cover sheet. You don't have to change any of that. I've pre-built it into the sheet, so it should go through finance pretty quickly. The only thing that we'll ask you to do is 3 things on it. The easiest of which is if you have an agency invoice tracking number at the top, you can see that first invoice tracking number arrow. Just put an invoice number, just write it in there. You can type it, you can handwrite it as long as it's legible. Either one is fine. We will accept handwriting on this if you want. Typing is probably a little more professional, but we'll accept it either way. So just want to tell you to include your invoice tracking number if you've got an organization that is putting together invoice number, in a sequence. Just put that number in there. The middle of the page are all of your schedules that you're charging expenses to. So you've got a Schedule 1 for salary, benefits, and taxes. You've got a Schedule 2, which is your professional fees or grants that you're giving out to folks. Schedule 3 and so on. So you're just going to want to have over in the current column is going to be the invoice that you are currently submitting to me. Those totals are going to be in that first column. The second column is cumulative, and that's what you have billed off your prior invoices and then added this invoice to. So please fill out both of those. Now all 7, I think it's 7 of these schedules, you're not going to have an expense for all 7 of these schedules. So it's fine to leave everything blank. The one thing I can tell you about this is just make sure your dollars add up. So when you go down each of these schedules and you see the total amount due at the bottom of the current column and the bottom of the cumulative column, you just want to make sure that the numbers add up in those total columns. And I'm going to double check your math, but it's a lot easier if I don't have to mark things down. That sort of thing. It's cleaner for the finance folks. It means that they're not going to reject things. So anyways, that's the cover sheet. The last thing that you need to do is whoever is authorized to sign invoices, it could be a mayor, it could be a director, it could be whoever your designated invoice, authorizing invoice signature is, needs to sign and then date that invoice at the bottom. So those are your 3 things. Your agency tracking number for the invoice, your totals that you're asking for reimbursement, and then third is that authorizing signature. Okay? So the second thing that you're going to send to us is just a performance sheet. This is the second page of that Word document, and it's pretty bare bones. You guys can customize this a little bit if you want to. We've got some folks that have submitted like a spreadsheet that they've copied and pasted in there. They've added sheets, so they're like, see additional document, and they've given me a whole sheet of things that they've done. This is your 3-month period to just tell me what you've been up to. And it could be, for folks that are doing physical pickups, it could be a metric for like tonnage that you've picked up and where you've picked it up at and how it's been covered in the media, anything like that. If you've been visiting with schools or community groups or anything like that, we want to hear about that. just honestly, anything that you've been up to that ties into the mission of your organization and what you applied for on the grant. We want to hear about all that stuff. There's never an invoice where you should have gone 3 months, charged a bunch of expenses, and not had a performance sheet, something to fill out on your performance sheet. If you aren't doing anything, you probably aren't going to have expenses. So just make sure that you're filling that out and submitting it in. If you don't, I will ask for it. And like I said, you can ask, or you can include additional things. So if you wanted to put additional paperwork, if you could write a book if you wanted to and include it as part of your invoice. I'm happy to see that, happy to read it, and happy to put it with the file. We just need to have something measuring your progress for that quarter. So you've told me what the total is that you're asking for reimbursement, and then you told me what you did. Now is the schedule sheet. The third thing is the schedule sheet. And so this is just an itemized list of all the expenses that are going to add up across the 7 different schedules. You could work on this first, and that could build the numbers for your cover sheet. In fact, I think that's the way that I would recommend to you to do it, was to build your itemized list on this third page to build your cover sheet. But like I said earlier, all of you are not going to have something in every single one of these categories. These 7 schedules were actually the different line items that all 15 projects fit into. So this is going to be kind of varied. I'll tell you that they're all a little bit different in the term of what type of backup documentation we're going to need. I'll talk about this in a little bit, but personnel costs are Schedule 1. It's salaries and benefits. You are not going to need a receipt for every single expense in salaries and benefits. I'll talk about that in a minute. But some of these other categories you will. So like Schedule 2, we will need documentation on every penny spent. Same with Schedule 3, supplies. We're going to need something summarizing travel on Schedule 4. And I don't know that I mentioned travel anywhere else. But I do want to tell you real quickly about travel. We are fine to pay for travel. Several of you have asked for travel as part of your application. We do go off the GSA standard of 47 cents a mile. That could change, by the time this grant period ends. But currently, as of December 2018, we're at 47 cents a mile. So if any of you do mileage to your employees, 47 cents is the rate, the current rate. So we're fine for that, for travel, a little bit of insurance. Capital is something that is going to impact, I think, just 1 or 2 of our projects, and that's something special. And then indirect costs, and then, of course, all 7 of those schedules add up to your grand total at the bottom. And I'll come back to Schedule 1 here in a minute. But this is just your itemized list of all your expenses. So this is your the schedule sheet is your 3rd page. Okay, so now we're going to get into personnel, which is Schedule 1, your salaries and your benefits. Let me tell you, first of all, with any personnel costs, that any individual that is charging time against the grant must have a grant timesheet included in the invoice. So if you've got, employee, let's say, Joe is working and he's working 40 hours a week. He's a full-time employee, but he's working maybe 2 hours a day or maybe, 10 hours a week, something like that towards the grant. We are not going to need all of his employment payroll type records, not up front. You're going to make sure you keep them just because that's, good practice and good accounting practice, all that sort of stuff. Make sure you keep it, but you don't need to necessarily submit it as part of the invoice. The only thing that I'm going to need is this employee time card, grant time card. You see it's marked at the top there, Special Litter Grant Program. If you can see my cursor, this is an Excel document. This is the second tab on an Excel document for your schedule sheet and your time cards. Make sure that you include the month that this time card is for, obviously the date and your agency name. You're going to want to include the employee name here, and then, of course, the hours worked and the hours charged to the grant. So like I said, it's entirely possible that you'll have an employee that will work 40 hours a week, and you'll charge 40 hours a week to the grant because that is the time that they worked on grant activities. If that's the case, you're just going to fill this out in your timesheet and sign it and submit it. I'll tell you that this Excel sheet, as you put in these two rows, it's going to populate on the far right under the hours. It's also going to populate at the bottom of the page where you see that auto-formulating. It's going to give you a total number of hours worked, which you could then charge the, your billable hours times your rate, and that'll all pre-populate for you. And that'll pre-populate for the agency hours worked and then also your special litter grant hours. So if you're working 40 hours a week and you're only charging 2, obviously, he's going to be working, he or she's going to be working, 8 hours this day, 2 hours this day, or 8 hours this day and 8 hours this day. Make sure that you're not charging more hours to the grant than you're actually working in this top row. So I want to tell you that. I'll tell you this middle section of the time card is annual leave, sick leave, and holiday. We're not going to reimburse for that. You can't bill it to the grant. We're not going to track it. You can leave that blank if you'd like. We use this with our litter grant program, and several of our counties like to justify hours, not on the clock by that. So we're not going to need that information. You don't have to put it in. And like I said, everything auto-populates. The other thing I can tell you about this time card is that you will need 2 signatures at all times. So the employee needs to sign, the supervisor needs to sign. And of course, this time card is for a 1-month period. So if you're submitting a quarterly invoice to me and Joe works for your agency, if Joe's got billable hours in July, then I need a July time card. If he's got a July and August, then, I'm going to need 2 time cards from Joe. They both need to be signed by Joe and by Joe's supervisor. Some of our grants have seasonal employees where I'm only going to see 1 time card in an invoice. Some have full-time employees where there should be 3 time cards in an invoice. So I hope that makes sense. And this is the only thing that we're going to need to see up front as far as employment information. We're not going to, this is what you're going to submit to us as part of the grant. This is not what you're keeping your time off of. We don't need to see payroll logs, pay stubs. We don't need to see any of the accounting software printouts that you're going to turn in with your payroll. That will come up in audit after the fact, but it's not going to it's not going to have any value for us providing reimbursement. So we don't need to see it on the front end, but it will come up after the fact. As far as benefits, I say it here. As far as benefits, so record any employee benefit costs under Schedule 1 salary and benefits on the schedule sheet. We don't need to see any type of receipts or payment information up front Like I said, that's going to be something they track on the back end during the audit phase of this, but I'm just going to back up a couple slides and show you. Right here at the top, Schedule 1, you've got a column for salaries and a column for benefits. We do not need to see anything else other than your total figure for benefits. We don't need to see any of that, not on the front end. Make sure that you are charging the benefits at a correct rate. If your unemployment rate is 25 cents per hour or 25 cents per per pay period, and you're charging us 32 cents for unemployment, that's going to be an audit finding that you overcharged us for a benefit. They're going to find that out on the back end. We're not going to know it up front because we're not asking for benefit information, but just total it and make sure it's right. And I think that's it as far as benefits. But just know that you're fine to charge benefits, especially for full-time employees, but we don't need to see all that information on the front end. I think that's everything about employees. Employees are pretty straightforward. I can tell you that with our grants, the most audit issues that we find are folks that have a grant timesheet that says, on the 4th of the month, Joe worked 8 hours, but on the agency time card it says he was off. So if he was off work, why is it being charged to the grant? That is a frequent problem with our litter grant program, and that's a frequent audit finding. So just make sure that if you are charging time, that it's for actual hours worked, and that it lines up with the time card that you fill out every week that your agency pays you off of. So make sure your time cards match. Make sure your personnel benefit information is correct. Okay, so now that we've talked about Schedule 1, the other schedules are really any type of expense that you're going to incur needs to have a receipt with it. And that's going to show, when we talk about supplemental documentation, that's going to show, 1, that you made a purchase, and 2, that you paid for it. So let me read through a couple of these bullet points. The first is to make sure that you submit a receipt for anything you purchased at all, and that could run from fuel and oil for a vehicle to a commodity like straw for an event or something like that, to promotional items, to signage, anything that you buy. If you're buying a trailer, anything like that, make sure that you're keeping a receipt for it. And the receipt needs to show a zero balance. So it needs to show that you paid for it, not just like an invoice that you're being invoiced, but that you haven't paid. I need to make sure that you have a date on your receipts. We need to make sure if you're submitting an invoice for July, August, and September, that the purchase didn't occur out of that invoice period. It needs to go on another invoice. It needs to be for those 3 months that the invoice is. So submit a receipt for anything that you buy. Show that it has a zero balance on it. I just mentioned that the purchases needed to take place during the invoice period. So your 3-month period that your invoice is when your purchase needs to happen. It needs to be for your grant. Obviously, it needs to be for the purpose stated in your application. And then if you're buying something like a trailer, I think we have a couple capital purchases that are a little bit separate. But just know that we can buy like a vehicle component or a trailer or anything basic like that, but it cannot exceed $49.99.99. The other thing is it needs to be listed in your application. We should have known about it. This shouldn't have been a surprise purchase. At this point, there are no, hey, I've got a good idea. Let's ask Mike if we can do this. It needs to be known and explicitly listed in your application. And, the reason for all of this is that we don't depreciate for any capital assets purchased. So it needs to be of kind of a minimal dollar value, $5,000 or less. So $49.99 is your limit. The last thing I'll tell you about purchasing is be sure to follow your organization's purchasing policy. Several of you are with nonprofits, and you may not have a purchasing policy, and that's fine. Several of you are with maybe city governments or county governments, and you may have real strict policy as far as purchasing, and that's fine too. Just make sure that you're following it. If you have to get bids, make sure that you're getting bids. We don't have to see it on the front end. I don't need to know that you're getting bids for an item, but that is something that they could ask for on the audit on the back end of the grant. They could ask to see those bids to make sure that you followed your organization's purchasing policy. They could even ask for your purchasing policy. So everyone's a little bit different here in terms of purchasing threshold, bid requirements, all that sort of stuff. You should know what your purchasing guidelines are from your organization, and you should be following them, and you should be keeping records. I can't tell you that enough. Not that we have a ton of purchasing policy violations in our audit finding reports, but know that it could happen. So they could ask for that stuff. I think that's pretty much it. Just make sure you include a full copy of any invoice or any receipt. I had to ask one of our grantees to submit, and the three that were already submitted to me, I had to ask for another copy of a receipt because I didn't see a date on it. So I just want to make sure that you're sending me full, legible receipts for all your expenses. And again, on the schedule sheet, the third item, you're going to see the different categories, and you're going to see what's required in terms of receipts. So if you get stuck, if you get any questions, if you say, Mike, what do you need on this, let me know. So, okay, so that's pretty much our discussion of invoices and getting you money. So let's fast forward through the process a little bit. You've filled out all your invoices. You've submitted them. We've gotten your reimbursement. The one thing I can tell you about reimbursement is that we do have a state law, a prompt payment law. So we have 45 days by state statute to get you money from the last date that we received things. So if you submit something and I say, well, we're missing this, I have an incomplete invoice, I need to see another version of this, something else, and you get it back to me 45 days from the time you get it back to me is when you're going to have money. So nobody should be without money for an extended period. We frequently do a little bit better than that here in the office. We process a lot of payments through our litter grant frequently, 95 invoices every single month from counties. So we're going through invoices a whole bunch. It's a big component of our job, so, we're not going to forget about you. Okay, so let me tell you, and this is no different if I think 4 of our 15 grantees are county governments, so y'all should know this by now. But just know that we're going to want to schedule a site visit with you sometime in the next 2 years. We're going to want to come out and see you guys in action, see you working with your groups, doing cleanups or whatever it is. I know we've got 2 capital projects. We're going to want to see the capital projects when they're completed. So just know that we're going to come out and see you. This is not like state government's coming to monitor me, I better, shape up sort of thing. this is really something we're going to schedule with you. If you haven't met us by now, our staff is pretty friendly, and we just want to get a sense for what the grant paid for, what the impacts are. We probably want to document that. And this whole site visit thing is something that goes along with state guidelines. So when you grant out money, you should do a site visit to kind of do like a quality assurance check. It's good practice, it's good form, and it's something that we've enjoyed doing with our county governments. 95 counties in Tennessee, we've got a litter grant with everyone. I think up to date, we were even in West Tennessee a couple weeks ago. So we've been up to, I think, 35 counties now of the 95. And if you've had one of our visits, we enjoy getting out in the field and doing that sort of stuff. We've been on education programs, cleanups, pretty much everything as part of these site visits. So if you've got a cool event coming up and you'd like us to join, we'd be happy to come. Observe, help do pickups, all that sort of stuff, and we'll take care of a little bit of business while we're there. But we just want to make sure you're keeping your records. We want to talk about your programming and what's next and all that sort of thing, and then measure the impact. So just know that we're going to want to come out and see you, spend a time looking at your litter enforcement program, if you've got an enforcement program or whatever else you got going on. The last thing that we need to talk about is the auditing side. So I just want to give you a perspective that when you submit an invoice for reimbursement, we are looking at that invoice. We are reviewing it through a lens of making sure that the payment is documented. You've got all your receipts and all your personnel stuff in there, and that it fits the criteria that you applied for. So it fits the grant, it fits your application, it's nothing, off the wall, that sort of thing. That's how we're reviewing invoices. One invoice, 1 3-month period at a time. After the fact, TDOT external audit, not the comptroller's office, TDOT external audit will call you for what they call a desk audit. And so they're going to take a look at the invoices that you submitted that we put into the accounting software, those PDFs. They're going to do a review of those, and then they're going to ask for the things that you didn't submit in the invoice. So they're going to ask to see that payroll. They're going to ask to see your benefits information. They may ask to see your purchasing guidelines, anything like that. And so they're going to, you won't see them, but you'll hear from them. Make sure you coordinate with them. Get them what they need, and then they're going to do kind of a desk review. They operate independent of our office. We don't know on the front end who they're going to select for an audit. It's kind of been everybody needs to go through an audit thing the past couple of years. So I just tell all of our grantees that you will get audited on the back end. And it's for as many as 2 years after the grant. So let me just tell you that the desk audit, I already told you they're going to go through payroll records. They're going to go through the invoices that you submitted, and that's what they're going to look at. It is a different lens. They're looking for compliance more than programming, and they're going to compare your different invoices, whereas we're looking at one invoice at a time. Do not double bill us for something. We may not catch it. We should catch it, but we may not catch it, but audit will absolutely catch it. So just wanted to share that with you. I have, I guess, kind of a legacy with this. My predecessor did the first round of these special litter grants. We had 14 projects then in 2013, and we had 7 audit findings, which is really bad. And so 50% of the grants that we found out or that we gave out, there was a finding on. which meant that we had to document things and made us look bad like we didn't know what we were doing, and it made the organization have to give back money at the end of it. So we don't want an audit finding. We don't want to have that problem with this go-around of the special litter grant. Some of the things that we've gotten dinged on in the past were just, they charged us, so-and-so charged us for an expense, but they didn't include a receipt. Which was kind of crazy. It was really kind of, easy things you would think that they'd catch. Somebody bought something that was off the wall that was not as part of their application. It was an unallowable cost. It was outside of the contract scope. And that's worth mentioning too, because your contract is really written to your project. I should be able to look through the contract language and tell all about your project and your application. But so we're not going to buy anything that's out of our contract scopes. And then this is more with our regular litter grant than the last round of special litter grant. But we have had issues with personnel, minor findings of personnel issues, things where, 8 hours, Joe's time was charged to the grant at 8 hours on this day, but when we got his payroll record, it said that he was on vacation on this day. So, how could he be charged to the grant if he's on vacation? So it's things like that. And so that's why you need to make sure your grant timesheet is going to match up with your payroll timesheet. So those are really kind of a summary of the last things that were found in audit. This is, again, a reminder. Just make sure that the employee timesheet and the grant timesheet match, and that the employee benefit expenses match those that are actually charged to the grant. So make sure that every expense is an actual expense, and make sure that those time cards are matching up. The last thing I'll tell you about audit is make sure you keep all your paperwork for 3 years. So this grant ends in June of 2020, I think. June of 2020. Make sure that you keep it through June of 2023. They will audit you most likely when we're done. And so after 2020, when we're concluding the grant, they will audit you then. And just know that they could come back and ask for things from up to 3 years. Make sure you keep all your receipts. Make sure you keep all your invoices that you've submitted. Make sure you keep all of your payroll and that sort of thing. County government, if any of you are in city or county government, you may have record retention policies that go above 3. We've heard 5. We've heard 10. I think 10 is probably the most I've heard. But you may have, record policies that require you to keep things for long amounts of time. That's fine, and by all means follow that. But the only thing that we're going to go back is 3 years. So just make sure you keep 3 years on file, and that's it. Just a couple resources for you. Everything that we're going to put relation to the grant, and I told you we're going to put the slides as well as this narrative, is going to be found on our Highway Beautification main page. That's the URL for it. If any of you are working with Keep Tennessee Beautiful, or if any of you need Nobody Trashes Tennessee information, the logo or how to use it, or the guidelines, that can all be found on those sites. And then I'm going to include our information as well. You're going to send invoices to me, and I'm going to be doing the first level review, so I'm going to make sure that everything's documented, all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, sort of thing. So I'll be doing that, and then I'll be passing it to Denise, who's going to provide a second level of review. She's going to sign off on the invoices, and then it goes to a third team member here that's going to get you set up for payment. So please, at any point, if you get questions, get stumped, want to know where your invoice is in the process, call, email either one of us. Those are our desk numbers, and then obviously our email addresses. So I want to share that with you. And I think that's it. I want to thank you for being part of the grant. We're obviously excited to offer it. And like I said, if anybody gets stuck or need anything else, play this back and go through the slides again, holler at us. We are happy to help. So with that, have a good night and good luck on the rest of this grant period. Thanks.